Hello, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues. Thank you very much for taking the time and trouble to join us today for the World Food Safety Day webinar hosted by GFSI with colleagues from the FAO and the World Food Programme. My name is Erica Sheward, and I have the absolute privilege and pleasure to be your host this afternoon where we are in the world, perhaps in the morning or in the evening where you are in the world. Wherever you are in the world, you are most welcome, and we really welcome you to join us for what is going to be a very lively and engaging discussion for the next hour or so. So just by way of some housekeeping rules, you will have all been placed automatically on mute, and we would ask you to remain in that mode, please. You will have an opportunity at the end of the session for us to answer your questions, but please, as you have them, please feel free to type them into the chat box, and we will curate them and attempt to answer as many of your questions as we can as we move through the session and ultimately at the end of the session. So, without further ado, please let's get underway. So the third World Food Safety Day will be celebrated this year on the 7th of June 2021 and aims, as always, to draw attention and inspire action to help prevent, detect and manage foodborne risks. All of these things contribute to food security, human health, economic prosperity, market access, tourism and above all sustainable development. Safe food for now and for a healthy tomorrow is this year's theme. It stresses that production and consumption of safe food has immediate and long-term benefits for people, the planet, and of course the economy. Recognizing the systematic connections between the health of us as people, as individuals, that of animals and plants, the environment and the economy to help us meet all of our needs for the future. Codex and GFSI started the World Food Safety Day adventure 2 years ago together at the GFSI conference in Nice in February 2019. It was the beginning of a wonderful new collaboration for GFSI, for Codex. And after GFSI having had observer status at Codex and putting positions on some Codex guidelines, GFSI and Codex decided to collaborate to build a bigger momentum and awareness around this inspired idea of World Food Safety Day. It was and is important today because GFSI has a major contribution to make to safe food for consumers everywhere. And this year we have an added dimension, which is the facilitation and hosting this year of the UN Sustainable Food System Summit. And this is all interrelated with the food safety agenda, but the bigger picture around economic prosperity and human health. Safe food is a prerequisite to economic and social development and cannot occur, as we all know, when there is no access to safe food. And this is why GFSI is putting its collaborative efforts behind World Food Safety Day this year and moving to support this great opportunity for us all to come together and have a conversation about food safety. There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, but the 6 that stand out for GFSI are the fight against poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, technical innovations as well as investments in food safety infrastructure, sustainable food systems in the context of cities and communities, and also sustainable consumption and production. The one that really stands out for us, of course, is the requirement for everybody to enter into a collaborative arrangement. We must work together for safe food for consumers everywhere, and GFSI is well positioned to do this and to bring people together to have this conversation. One of GFSI's strategic priorities is around public-private partnerships, where we feel it really necessary for us to work with our regulatory community, our NGO community, to ensure that we understand what contribution we can all make to safer food in the world. It is with the absolute biggest privilege and pleasure that I would like to welcome my colleagues this afternoon who are going to engage with us on this adventure. I would like to welcome, first of all, Marcus Lipp from the FAO. So Marcus, you are most welcome. Good afternoon. Marcus is the head of the FAO Food Safety and Quality Unit. I would also like to welcome Sarah Cahill, Senior Food Standards Officer with the Codex Alimentarius Commission, and also Virginia Siebenrock from the World Food Programme, who is head of food safety and quality. I'm sure you'll agree with me that there is not a greater panel that could come together to share their insights around World Food Safety Day this year. So without further ado, then I would like, if I may, Marcus, to hand over to you to just get a sense from your point of view of the state of food safety worldwide right now and why this cross-sector collaboration is key. So Marcus, if I may.
Thank you so much, Erica, and also from my side, a very warm welcome to everybody. Delighted to be here with you, and thank you much for your interest in World Food Safety Day. So picking up on Erica's introduction, you probably are all aware that there is no food safety indicator in the SDG goals. And while food is absolutely critical to us, I mean, after all, after air, water, food is the third most urgent thing that every human being needs. Every single one of us, you know. And after that, we can worry about shelter and things like this, but food is absolutely critical for our survival. And this is recognized. There's a lot of nutrition, a lot of food security in the SDG goals, but there's nothing on food safety. It's kind of astounding, and it may has to do, that's at least a postulate from my side, with the fact that we may not have fully utilized the angle of describing food safety and food for what it is. So intrinsically, food means it's safe, right? Otherwise it's waste. Otherwise we throw it away. Otherwise we don't want to consume it. That is part of the problem. And when we talk about food safety, and maybe part of why it's not explicitly recognized, because of course food is safe. That's at least a luxury that we have here in developed or high-income countries, where we can go to the local supermarkets or local almost everywhere and just rely on the fact that there is oversight from governments, that there is governance in the industry, that there are legal instruments that are suitable to protect ourselves or at least punish those if they fail to protect us. That is lovely, and that's a luxury we all can enjoy in high-income countries, but that's not the state of the world everywhere. Certainly not the case in many low and middle-income countries. So food is not a normal consumer packaged good. Food is absolutely unique, not just because it's the third most urgent thing that we all humans need. It has these deep cultural, psychological aspects that food is part of communication. Essentially, food is another language, right? There are many sayings in different languages that in English always go like love goes through the stomach, and there are equivalents in many other languages. So we recognize that. We know that food is not the same thing like a iPhone or a Rolex watch or whatever else you want to label. So we build communications over food. We network, we fall in love over food, we have our family connections. This is food. This is not a car or the unboxing of my latest cell phone. So it is fundamentally different that we need to think about food. It's fundamentally different how we need to think about food. Food is more intimate. It becomes a part of us. So of course we want it to be safe. It is actually very uncomfortable to even talk with many people if food is not safe. What does that mean? I mean, did I poison my family all the time, or all these things that you may have experienced in your own discussions with family if you work in the food safety arena? We know that food safety burden is huge. WHO's FERC study several years ago, 420,000 deaths per year. 1 in 10 people fall ill. Mostly it's children that take the burden, children under 5 years. We know that food safety is critical for nutrition because whoever had ever a foodborne illness understands very well that the absorption or integration of nutritional benefits of food is absolutely impossible if you have a foodborne illness. So we will not nourish. And where it's a chronic problem, food safety, children will end up stunted. They cannot grow, they cannot develop. So all this food safety is critical for many, many SDGs, yet it's too often assumed to be the case and assumed to be just part of it. Now, the other thing, of course, nothing new to GFSI members. Naturally, food is a very dynamic environment. It's an extremely high throughput area. Food is constantly produced, has a short shelf life in many cases at least, and is more importantly constantly consumed. So huge amount of material is in a dynamic way moving through the supply chain. Nothing is static. And so that is an extreme challenge, not just in procuring and distributing, procuring the incoming material and distributing the outgoing material, but also in making sure that all the processes are robust as robust can be, because food needs to be safe today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow. We need food every day, and it needs to be safe in any occasions. So it needs to be manufactured safe. It needs to be the farmers need to worry about, because many food safety hazards actually start at the farm level. Many chemical food safety hazards, once they're introduced in the food, it's almost impossible to get them out. So at every step in the supply chain, everybody who participates there, the farmers, the traders, the harvesters, the collectors, the processors, the distributors, and us as consumers, when we purchase, when we bring it home, when we put it on the table, every step can render food unsafe. Every step is important for food safety. We all need to work together that we actually have safe food at the very end. Super complicated when one starts to think about it. And this is exciting for us that we have this World Food Safety Day, of course, now for the third year, and that we can invite you all to join us there. So, and as you know, World Food Safety Day, we have just released a guide, or will release that today, that it's everybody's business. We all can work together. So if you need any examples on what to do, how to engage, please go to our website. I will post the links after I stop talking, because I cannot multitask that well. And then please put them up. They're available in 6 languages. And so that's a start how you can engage there. So we talked a lot about food safety and how it affects us, and we all know that to some extent, but I did want to take the time to really point out that we have to learn how to talk differently about food. We have to learn to ensure that all the other people who may not understand as much as food as an occupational hazard for us here as the food safety community need to understand that food is not like any of the other consumer packaged goods, not like any other products, consumer products that are out there. So that requires good governance systems. Food is heavily traded internationally and nationally. Food travels many miles before it reaches actually our tables. We want that because we want fresh fruits, or we like seafood and live in the middle of the mountains, or whatever the topic may be. And these logistics need to happen. They happen through the private sector, but they also happen because of good governance, of good instruments that governments put in place, governance structures that ensure enforcement, that facilitate incentives for food production, that facilitate incentives for trade, that ensure easy trade. Because remember, or you know that, sorry, many food is just perishable. So getting stuck at a border immediately has a penalty there and causes problems. There is huge amount of work where the government needs to step up, play a role, just like as we discussed earlier, the industry, the farmers, and everybody else needs to play a role. So from a high income country's perspective, much of these things are in place. From a low and middle income country's perspective, much of development is possible, is needed, and it's critical. Agricultural products make up to 60% of the GDP of whole countries. That's the majority of their economic activity. Now, there's a national consumption, of course, but agriculture is often the first product that enters, or one of the first economic activities that countries can use to connect to international trade, to reach out, to have access to markets. So it's huge. And then we are talking about food. It's mostly agricultural product in terms of food. So one way to position food safety again in this discussion is there's actually one criteria that separates an agricultural product from becoming food. And this is the question, is it safe enough for humans to consume? If the answer, if we don't know, it's an agricultural product. Lots of things grow in the fields. If the answer is yes, then we can talk about that as food. So food safety is that distinguisher, this differentiator that qualifies something to become consumable for us as human beings. So in the end, we all need to remain vigilant. We all need to work together. So FAO is here, WFP is here, we work together. We are thrilled to be here on at the invitation of GFSI, private sector initiative. I think it's fantastic. Food safety and food is way bigger than all of us. Nobody can do it alone, but we can solve the problems together. And this is why we're excited to be here. So if we work together, if we ensure that policies are aligned, that the incentive structures are appropriate, that enforcement is in an equal measure available, that the legal framework exists to guarantee that all, and that the consumers are actually informed enough to be able to make informed decisions, or the informed decisions lead to safer food, then we have a great future ahead of us in terms of safe food being available for everybody, everywhere. With that, I stop and thank you very much for your attention.
Marcus, thank you very much. I resonated so much with me, the idea about food and love. Really, I've never heard anybody talk about it quite so dynamically as that. It's something that's just notionally in everyone's mind, but it is the fibre of our lives that connects us. And certainly, in my personal experience, food and love are intrinsically linked. Okay, so we've set the scene in terms of this mechanism of collaboration, the idea that safe food is everyone's responsibility, which of course was the theme of last year's World Food Safety Day that we really engaged in. So if there was an ask for the audience today, if you had one ask, Marcus, on World Food Safety Day on the 7th of June 2021, what would you ask these wonderful people that have come to join us today to do on that day, or leading up to that day? What would the ask look like? What would you want them to do?
Thank you, Erica. I think the ask is talk about it. Talk about that food safety cannot be taken for granted. It is not an accident that food is safe. It is the diligent work of many, many people, from the farmers to everybody else, to us in the kitchen when we finally prepare food, that keeps food safe, that makes it safe, that renders it safe, that keeps it safe. And all of us need to work together. We need to make active choices, we need to make conscious choices, and this doesn't come for free. It requires efforts, it requires activities, and it requires a commitment to work together. Food safety is often in the industry labeled a pre-competitive area. So it is outside any competition, because food just has to be safe, otherwise it's not food. If it's not safe, it's not food. So we have to talk about that, I think, in an informed way, not in a way that we scare people away, not in the way of, oh my God, here are the 50 million ways you could have died today, and it's just because of me that you survived. No, that's not working so well. But in a way that helps them make informed decisions, that helps put control back to consumers, or the feeling of control that they can do something, that they can ask the right questions to their suppliers, to the supermarkets, to the farmers, wherever they purchase their food, and that we work together. So FAO has, of course, also private sector engagement strategies. If there's some interest there, to look it up on our website, please, we love to get engaged. There are multiple opportunities, of course, that we can work together on a more institutional level, but there's much we can do on a personal level. And so I was more focused on that in my response. Thank you.
Super, that's great. Okay, so we just need to keep talking. I think that's the message that we've all heard from Marcus. And in that vein, I'd like to, if I may, invite Virginia and Anne to join us in this conversation. So it would be really good to hear from both of you, maybe Virginia first and then Anne second, about how we are in our respective organisations getting behind this call for action that Marcus has set out, how GFSI, that represents the world's largest food, drink and consumer goods businesses, I mean, that's where we're at, how our members are getting involved, what we're doing versus how, you know, what we're doing to support World Food Safety Day and what that means for the World Food Programme. So Virginia, if I may, it would be really good to hear from your point of view as somebody who is really at the sharp end of food safety for very, very vulnerable consumers, the people that we really need to be most concerned about and moving to work together to support. So welcome, you're so welcome. It'd be lovely to hear from you, Virginia, from your perspective.
Thank you, Erica. I think a small introduction of the World Food Programme is in place because we might be less known than the other UN agencies here today. So the World Food Programme, or WFP as we like to call ourselves, is a part of the United Nations, and it is the leading organization that delivers food assistance in emergencies and also in humanitarian operations worldwide. Apart from that, we also work with local communities to improve nutrition and build resilience. So as our colleagues here, we eat, live and breathe food. Just to give an idea of dimension, in 2019, WFP assisted approximately 97 million people in over 85 countries. So it's a very large operation. For that, what I would like to say is that we acknowledge that the food and food-related assistance lie at the heart of the struggle to break the cycle of hunger and poverty. And in the efforts to achieve food security, we recognize the undeniable role of food safety, as Marcus already spoke about so lovely. We believe that the 2021 theme for the World Food Safety Day, which is Safe Food Now for a Healthy Tomorrow, links extremely well with our mandate. And I cannot underline enough the word now, because we deal with emergencies. And so now is the thing for us. I think one of the main things that I can say about the World Food Safety Day is that for us in WFP, we recognize that we cannot work in isolation. So public-private partnerships are key to develop our objectives further. I would say that specifically for WFP, we try to procure local food as much as possible for all of our operations, for food distribution, for school feeding programs, for what we call cash-based transfers, which enhances the utilization of local retailers, for example, from smallholder farmers, etc. So often we depend on the partnership, first of all, with the regulators to work shoulder to shoulder with so that we can move the food safety priorities ahead. So this is the first piece of partnership that we are very involved in, and we believe is one of the most important ones to build a strong resilience in terms of food safety in the countries that we operate in. Okay. I think in this regard, WFP plays a very similar role to the private sector because we share many of the same concerns, and we also face many of the same gaps in that sense. So we have indeed developed over the years several different private sector partnerships, as we believe this is key to join forces towards the development of the food safety objectives. In this context, I believe that the cooperation is the key to identify and develop the tools that are needed to meet these objectives. And just to mention a few of the main ones we have struggled with in the past, and I believe are very critical, are the availing of properly defined resources, especially in the context that we operate in. Training and capacitation is another key one. And I would say the last one is strong partnerships from all ends. I'll leave it to Sarah now.
Okay, thanks, Virginia. That's brilliant. And I remember so vividly last year at the GFSI conference in Seattle, which we managed to have just before the pandemic really hit. This incredibly compelling presentation from one of your colleagues about the challenges that the World Food Programme is facing in food safety around the world, and how we can, you know, come together to help. And it was a pretty much a business critical moment for GFSI, where our members, companies that were represented there, said, Erica, we must help. You know, what can we do? We must help. And I think your point about capacity building, capability building is really somewhere that we feel the private sector can lend support and really can deliver a good outcome. So it's wonderful to have you with us, and it's great that we've started that conversation. We just need to move that conversation into a call for action. So so moving on then, so Anne Girardi, welcome, my esteemed colleague Anne, who is really the engine house, the powerhouse behind GFSI's work on public-private partnerships. And I think we've heard both from Virginia and from Marcus about the importance of regulatory frameworks, and this idea that Codex sits absolutely front and center of the international conversation about rule setting, and then how we can equate that you know, to opportunities to deliver capability around safe food. And Anne leads our work on capability building, and I think it would be really good for our audience. The questions are rolling in, so it would be great to hear from you a little bit about our work and how it sits within this sort of collaborative framework with our colleagues here from FAO, Codex and the World Food Programme.
Thanks a lot, Erica. Welcome, everyone. Thank you. Well, that's a big question. I think, as you say, Erica, we are setting the bar of what the good looks like at GFSI in terms of food safety management systems, and we want to provide tools for the industry to implement Codex Standards, Codex guidelines. We have an observer seat at Codex, and we have a special committee of people from the industry, regulatory affairs directors, putting positions on food hygiene, on CCFIX, on various Codex committee on a day-to-day basis, and we think that's front and center of the work to bring a risk-based approach and a science-based approach from the industry to Codex. And that's front and center for us, because then the work of Codex is feeded back to the benchmarking requirements of GFSI, so that we can improve our framework to give more implementing tools to the industry in terms of food safety culture and food safety management system, to support small and medium enterprise out there to understand Codex guidelines in a very operational level. As you said, we think that the public and the private dialogue is key. You can't regulate what you don't understand, and when the businesses and how the businesses are working. So we created this government to business platform 5 years ago to streamline the public-private projects of GFSI, to try to address common challenges together with the regulators of all the world. We work on data sharing, we work on capability building with regulators. We had a seminar a few weeks ago on how we can use new technologies, information and communication technologies in audit and inspection activities in the time of COVID and for the future as well. So we think that's critical, and we also think that it's better when the industry understands well the role of regulators in food safety, why they are here to do their work as national food control systems, and so that there is a better understanding of each other, and there is also a place where we can share good practices on what is coming, what are the trends, how do we do business, and how do regulators regulate what is on the from each side. And we are also discussing right now, as you said, and as Virginia said, a new capability building program for GFSI with all those stakeholders, and also with international standard setting bodies and international governmental organizations to strengthen that place.
Okay, thanks, Anne. So that's just a bit of an insight into some of the things that GFSI is doing, trying to sort of be the glue that brings the food industry, regulatory community, and our NGO colleagues together. So you mentioned sharing of data. There's a question actually that's just come in on that. So I think it would be good if I may, just to kind of mix it up a bit to just share this question with you. So thank you for the question. So the question is, how do we deal with the challenge of data? In most low to middle income countries, there is not yet sufficient data to inform targeted policy decisions on where in the value chain to focus to deal with the most significant causes of unsafe food. So how do we deal with that problem for policymakers, and what incentives, you know, do we need? So while you're thinking about that question, all of you, perhaps I just add a little bit of flavour to the data question. So I think it's really pertinent and relevant. Data is a big issue for GFSI. We are talking all the time about what we don't know and how, with better information, how much more we could do. So this whole area of data sharing is traditionally quite sensitive. There are lots of challenges for businesses around sharing their data, as everybody will know and understand. But what we are slowly building, I think, is some momentum within our business community to enable them to see the value of just sharing just things in a small way, you know, just sharing in a small way with our regulatory community, with other businesses, with NGOs. Just sharing in a small way has a massive impact in terms of the outcome. So the very question around targeting and where the real challenges are, you know, our business community know the answer to those questions in their own supply chains. You know, they know amongst themselves where they are facing difficulties, and just sharing information in a very small way. And what we're thinking about is just architecture, infrastructure, coherent approaches to data sharing that GFSI can deliver. So thank you for the data question. It'd be good to get the panel's views on that while I was jabbering on. You've probably had some thoughts. So Virginia, if I may, can I come to you first on that one?
Absolutely. And I have to say, this is something that is part of our daily struggle, especially in some of the places we operate in the world. The lack of data, which does not help in terms of moving forward and making decisions. What I would highlight as two of the main things that could be done, and is being done in some locations, to help build that data, is to have specific resources and projects availed in specific contexts to help build some data in a positive way. So I think having those conversations at local level, engaging the right stakeholders, so the governments, the farmers, or the manufacturers, is very important. And at least where we work, this has shown to have effect on generating data. Now, I would highlight another thing. I think we are afraid of sharing data because we do not know what's going to be done out of it, right? So I think having transparency and clarity in some of these discussions and utilizing successful stories to bring to other contexts is quite important, and it has also shown to be a great source of success in those cases. So those are the two things that I would say for that question.
Thank you very much indeed. Marcus, any thoughts from you on, any reflections from you on that particular question around data and the challenges of data sharing and gathering?
Thank you. Yeah, I can just add something. And of course, there is a minimum amount of data that is required, or that is becoming rather critical. But I'm also reminded of part of my job is leading risk assessments, leading expert meetings, expert committees through making risk assessments for chemicals, for veterinary drug residues, for contaminants, for all kinds of things. And, you know, it doesn't matter what the topic is, there's never enough data, ever. So we always want more data. It's absolutely invariable, the question that we start hitting data limitations. So many times I try to focus all our activities on not what we cannot say because we are lacking data. No, what can we say? So yes, for a quantitative risk assessment and a detailed exposure analysis of all the various groups within a population, including pre-existing medical conditions or not, you need enormous amounts of data. But what if you don't have them? So then maybe risk ranking is a good approach to get started. Doesn't require nearly as much data as a full quantitative risk assessment, and provides a good starting platform. We almost always, there are exceptions, we almost always have data, some data. We almost always can say something. How far can we push that? I think that's a flip side to this discussion, and that doesn't take away that, yeah, data sharing is absolutely critical, because nothing is more annoying than repeating data generation when one is aware that these data exist, but whatever, for some reason or another, one cannot get access in a way that's helpful. Okay, that is a totally valid discussion, and that needs to be solved, because it's a huge waste of money to replicate data generation. But equally important, I find it to focus on, if we want to change something, what can we do with what we have, rather than always complaining, always demanding more data and saying, before I can move, I need more data. Just a different perspective here. Thank you.
So I think the message is shoot for the moon by all means, but start somewhere. Start building the rocket at least. Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you. Right, well, moving on then, if we may. So great question. Thank you so much to our audience. Please keep them coming. Please keep them coming, and we'll take as many of them as we can. If I'd like to move on, please, to Sarah. Sarah, so welcome. So lovely to see you. Thank you for joining us. I think most of our audience will, of course, be very familiar with Codex and the incredible framework that sets on global food safety rules and regulations and standards. But it would be really good to hear from you in your capacity as Senior Food Standards Officer, what the framework is and what contribution it makes to safe food. So Sarah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Erica, and great to be here today. Indeed, I just want to start maybe by going back to something Marcus said at the outset, and he said, if it's not safe, it's not food. And then we have to ask the question, how do we know it's safe? And this, to me, is where what we call Codex Alimentaris, or the food code, comes in. This gives us a set of standards, of guidelines, of codes of practice that help us ensure many agricultural products are safe and therefore become food. And that they can protect the health of consumers and facilitate fair practices in food trade, which is the mandate of Codex. And this is truly a mammoth task to do this. And as many of you know, it can really only be achieved by partnership. And we have tried to, I would say, enshrine that element of partnership and working together in our vision for Codex, which is where the world comes together to create food safety and quality standards to protect everyone, everywhere. And we also try to enshrine that partnership in our core values for Codex. So we talk about collaboration, about inclusiveness, consensus building, and transparency. So I think when it comes to partnership for food safety and creating the elements to build a robust process to ensure safe food, Codex is really a good example. We have partnership within the UN. We have FAO here today, WFP are here. FAO and WHO are our parent organizations, but we have 16 other UN organizations that are our partners, are our observers within Codex, and WFP is one of those. We're also a partnership with many member countries. There's 188 member countries that come together in Codex. And perhaps more relevant to this audience is our partnership with inter and non-governmental bodies, the private sector, the civil society. And this is through our 239 and growing number of observers. And this is really what allows us, I think, to ensure that our Codex standards are linked into the reality of producing safe food. So it allows us to be aware of what's happening, to build standards and texts that are based on sound science and are ultimately usable for those who need them. it's hard to explain the volume maybe of Codex standards, but now every year we try to develop what we call a Codex scorecard to just illustrate that. And I won't go through that in detail, but just to maybe mention a few numbers to show the extent of the Codex Alimentarius. For example, if we look at maximum residue limits for pesticides, and we have over 5,500 of those covering almost 230 pesticides. Similarly, for food additives, we have more than 4,500 maximum levels covering over 370 food additives or groups of food additives. And in addition, we have 54 codes of practice, 79 guidelines, and food safety is really at the core of all of these. So it does provide a huge resource to anyone working in food safety. And when it comes to the partnership that's key to developing of those, this starts at the very beginning. Marcus just spoke about data and the need for data and his experience in risk assessment. And of course, we rely very much on the risk assessments that FAO and WHO undertake to develop our standards and standards that ensure food will be safe. And this is where many of the observers, much of the private sector, even though we never have enough data, Marcus, I think we also have many who contribute a lot of data to that process. And without that, we wouldn't be able to develop these standards. So this is key. At the next stage, the standard development process, there's also this really important opportunity for engagement and providing input. We heard about some of the challenges a few moments ago from Anne in terms of trade during COVID and things and the progress we need to make there. Right now, we have guidelines being developed for the assessment and use of voluntary third-party assurance programs. And in developing these, this is where there's been really strong engagement from the observers. You, GFSI, have been engaged in that process and others as well. And this is critical to ensure that the outputs that we produce are practical, they're relevant to today's world, and they resonate not only with governments, but also the private sector, recognize them as being able to support their efforts to produce safe food. Of course, it doesn't stop there. And one of the important things we now have is a new goal within our Codex strategic plan. And this is to increase impact through the recognition and use of Codex standards. This goal has three objectives. We want to raise awareness of Codex standards, support initiatives to enable understanding and implementation application of Codex standards, and then look at impact. And we heard Anne mention already some of the great efforts that are underway in GFSI, and the GFSI benchmarking requirements, which are aligned with the Codex standards, are a great example of how partnership can be used to promote use of an internationally agreed and adopted standard. Of course, we can't stop there. We then need to understand or have a feedback mechanism or a monitoring system in place of some sort that helps us understand when we raise awareness about these standards, what does that mean? What's the true value? And use that information to engage others and enable us to continue to develop better standards that are meeting not just today's challenges, but also tomorrow's food safety needs. So I think this brings us back now to World Food Safety Day, which kind of brought us all here together today. And we know food safety is everybody's business, but maybe we don't know what everyone is doing about it. And our goal 3 in our Codex strategic plan aims to put more focus on that. And World Food Safety Day then is a fantastic opportunity, a fantastic vehicle to work towards this. You know, within Codex, we were really proud and happy to have this day, 7th of June, to focus the global attention on food safety. The idea initially came from some Codex members, so it's great to see that we're now moving into the 3rd year of its celebration. And we know, of course, that to ensure food safety, we have to work every day at this. And if some of you watched our newscast broadcast on the 18th of February, which was issued to launch the 2021 World Food Safety Day campaign, you may have seen some of the stories from around the world on efforts to ensure food is safe for everyone. So while food safety needs to happen every day, having this day gives us that opportunity to remind others, to make sure and talk about the issue, as Marcus said, and make sure that everybody knows how much work is actually required to make food safe every day for a healthy tomorrow. So partnership is key. And again, we heard about the guide for World Food Safety Day 2021 being launched today, which has lots of great messages and ideas of how to participate. And in addition to that guide, we also have a new section on the World Food Safety Day website today to give organizations, institutions, individuals even more ideas to help planning initiatives for raising awareness and inspiring action on food safety. So coming back to it, I think Codex is a partnership. That partnership is key to ensuring we get that message on food safety across for World Food Safety Day. And Erica, at the beginning you mentioned the SDGs and you referred to 17 in particular on partnership. And within Codex, we've just tried to look at the SDGs and see which ones are really important. And 17 is one of them for us. And we have a recent publication on Codex and the SDGs that I can share that highlights this, along with, of course, the obvious ones like zero hunger, no poverty, good health, and economic growth and that. But I think by making people aware that we can contribute to all these different areas also helps us get the message about food safety out to a wider group of people, and not just us core food safety professionals, because we need others to engage in order to really get progress on food safety. So I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Super, Sarah, thank you so much. That's brilliant. And you know, without Codex, I mean, where would we all be? I mean, I think, you know, this really is the linchpin that holds us all together and creates not just architecture frameworks, you know, and great resource, but also provides a facilitation opportunity, somewhere for us to come, somewhere for us to meet, somewhere for us to have a conversation. So to pick up on Marcus's point, you know, let's just keep talking about it, but that, you know, that's where it's at. So thank you very much. Okay, so I'm just going to move quickly on back to Anne, because we've talked a lot about you know, collaboration and partnership, and GFSI has a very strong role to play in this space, and we're proud of the role that we play in this space. Essentially, we are very well known for our certification and harmonization and benchmarking work, but less well known perhaps for the other two strategic priorities that we work on, and public-private partnerships and capability building, in my mind, have always sat, you know, hand in glove, side by side. And you lead both those areas of work for us. You're a busy lady. It would be really good, I think, just to share with everybody GFSI's approach to public-private partnership work and what that means for GFSI and what we're doing right here, right now, that people could get involved in. So over to you, Anne.
Thanks, Erica. Well, we want you to help us shape the future of capability building at GFSI, and we are having a public consultation right now on how to, with a strategic review of our capability building program. And again, in light of what everything has been said, it's critical for us and for the future of safe food for consumers everywhere to reshape that capability building program to make sure it's serving the greater good. So please take the public consultation. We want to do that with all of you. We want to shape that new program with all of you. We want to serve the World Food Program beneficiaries, the micro enterprise of this world, the SMEs of this world. We want to ease the collaboration with regulators, with IGOs. So that's where we are, Erica, on that one. And maybe quickly also to echo Sarah and Virginia, to our community today. I think they are food safety heroes all year long, and June 7 is their day to make sure that everyone else around the world know they are food safety heroes. So please, everyone, use the guide, download the guide to have a great campaign to explain you what to do, how to reach out to your community. This is the time for everyone to know what you are doing on a day-to-day basis and how critical your role as food safety managers, as CPOs, CBs, food safety expert is critical, regulators is critical to make sure that everyone is eating safe food, is eating food, as Marcus said, every day. And please post your pictures, take pictures, engage your employees. That's going to be one of the key messages during the GFSI conference coming on the 23rd to the 25th of March, we'll have a special, huge, beautiful, dedicated booth on the World Food Safety Day. Come, take pictures of yourself. We hope to see Sarah, Marcus, and Virginia on that booth and take pictures all together during this virtual event. And then we'll post all those pictures so that you are the faces of food safety, and you will be the food safety heroes on June 7th. So download the guide that Marcus has shown you many times and use it to reach out to your stakeholders and be engaged.
Okay, thanks, Anne. Well, that's a beautiful segue into a beautiful question, actually. So we've talked a lot, haven't we, about food safety being everyone's business. And we have obviously made it clear that GFSI represents the largest food and drink and consumer goods businesses on the planet. But that's not the whole story. There are lots of tiny little businesses, small businesses, catering businesses, hospitality businesses, home-based businesses that have a passion and are inspired to make and sell great food. And we have a lovely question here from someone who says, how can I contribute to World Food Safety Day as a startup SME with limited resources funding? I love the concept of safe food for a healthy tomorrow. It's so inspirational. So what's in the toolkit? What can we say to this wonderful person who's posted this question? What's in there for SMEs? What could we suggest that would be a good way to get on a track for 7th of June? Marcus.
Well, I'd take a start, and thanks, Erica. Thanks for the question. That's really a great question, because fundamentally, yes, we talked about micro organizations, SMEs, small enterprises, small scale firms. It doesn't matter. Even if we cook at home, we need to be aware of food safety. So it's either, if I cook for myself, I still can screw it up. So even there, food safety is important. But for anybody, download the guide. There are some examples. You can also look it up on our websites. There are more examples from last year's events that we just list there. But it can be anything. You can make a YouTube video that talks about food safety. You can make a staff event and raise that topic during a staff event, just with your local employees. You can make a TikTok video if that's your thing. I mean, there is Facebook posts, a dedicated section on your company's website, highlighting what you do for food safety, highlighting the need for food safety. So these are immediately implementable things that you can take a selfie and with the World Food Safety Day logo and tweet it. Sorry, I'm getting to the boomer age where these words not coming out so fluently, but so there's multiple ways that you can do that. It can be something simple. It can be a small gesture. It doesn't have to be a full-blown movie production or a completely own website. No, every effort counts, and any effort is necessary and will be important. From the single tweet, because you can, to a section on your website, because that makes most sense, to your staff education, to discussions with your family at home. Anything is really relevant. So thank you.
Erica, if I can just say something quickly to complete what Marcus said. We talked today about how we collaborate together. So I think it's good also for everyone out there. You collaborate on a day-to-day basis with your clients, with your consumers, with your regulators. So go talk to them, engage a very small event, open the door of your company to explain your processes, to explain your food safety management system, your culture. That's the best opportunity for you to show how much you are a food safety hero, and to enhance maybe local collaboration and to create something better altogether.
Okay, great. Well, hopefully that answers the question, not just for the lovely person that asked it, thank you very much, but for maybe a number of others that had that question. So I think we've got time for a couple of more if we may. Is that all right? So hang on, panelists, and hang on, audience, because we've got a few more we can try and get through. For those that we don't get to today, please bear with us, and we will endeavour to get the answers to your questions directly to you after the webinar if we miss you out. So I have one here that says, in an effort to promote circular economies and reuse of waste as resources for food production, concerns on food safety are of significance. How do we accommodate such efforts and ensure food safety, since these are the areas where such data is inadequate, lacking? So this is the circular economy question, and reuse, recycle. So who would like to take this one? Marcus, okay, go ahead.
I'll start as long as nobody else volunteers. No, it's a fantastic question, because our goal, which are enshrined, of course, in the 2030 SDGs, but also in FAO, it's transformation of food systems, with Food Systems Summit coming up. It has all feeds into the same direction. We need sustainable food production. That the way the food production the planet actually can sustain, with the goal of feeding 10 billion people by 2050 that mostly live in cities. So this is the demand, this is the ask. And the food needs to be safe, and it needs to be nutritious, and it needs to be diverse, and so on and so forth. So this is the task that we have, and we know that all. So circular economy will have to play into that, because we need to minimize food loss and waste. We cannot incur the greenhouse gas emissions that come with agriculture and with food production per se, and then just throw it away. So it may be necessary, but we have to do our best to minimize that and to reuse where we can, or use it as feed, or whichever way. Now, as the poster already mentioned, that comes with all kinds of consequences and things we need to think through. And I think a phenomenal first step is to pose this question, to start thinking, okay, what do I need to think through in this regard? What can accumulate in those circles that I need to watch out, to monitor, to manage, and then do it. And then talk about it. Present at conferences, share at GFSI, write in scientific papers, do something, share your knowledge, make a guide, I don't know, make a new standard, propose a new standard, go to somebody, share it with somebody, talk about it, because we need to learn it. And once somebody has learned it, the others don't necessarily have to make the same experiences also, because we can just leverage that knowledge, build on that knowledge, and further in our economies and our food production in a way that we can integrate circular economy to the way it makes sense, to the maximum benefit, and minimizing the risks doing so. So, thank you.
Okay, super.
Erica, if I maybe just add to what Marcus said. I mean, I think we already have a lot of great processes in food safety. You know, we have risk analysis, we have risk assessment. You know, we recently revised our general principles of food hygiene and HACCP. So there's great approaches out there already, and the question is, what are we applying them to now? If it's something that we're reusing, or a whole new food, a novel food, I think we shouldn't forget that we have some great systems already in place, and wherever the food is coming from, we need to apply those. And I think this also applies when we're reusing things. The same principles are there, and we shouldn't think we have to completely reinvent the wheel, but use some of the great resources we already have.
Thank you, Sarah. Right, well, I'm looking at my watch, and sadly, I think we are literally almost out of time. Otherwise, we're just all going to disappear without saying thank you and goodbye properly. So thank you to everybody who's posed questions. I'm sorry we haven't managed to get through as many as we would have wanted, but there are some super questions here. So what we'll do is we will make sure that we get the questions that people haven't had answered to our panelists today, and return some dialogue back to you in the spirit of collaboration and ongoing conversation conversation. So on behalf of GFSI, I would like to thank each and every one of you, our panelists, Virginia, Marcus, Sarah, Anne, thank you so much for joining us today in this celebration of our partnership in anticipation of World Food Safety Day on the 7th of June. And we will be doing lots of promotion and supporting it to be a great success. And of course, thank you to all of you people who have joined us and taken the time and trouble out of your busy days to come and start this process of having a conversation. As Marcus said at the beginning, the easiest, simplest, best thing to do is let's just talk about it. So that's going to be my number one takeaway from today. I'd like to thank everyone that supported the event, the team at the CGF, our mothership. Thank you to Fred and Sophie and everyone that's been a part of today. So on behalf of everyone, I wish you a good day, the rest of your day, wherever you are. And thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for Lee and you. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Have a good day.
Bye, everybody. Goodbye.